with what I have planned for today. I would like to know if you had any further questions on what Jorge did during the morning, anything that was not clear and you would like me to explain in a bit more depth, or not at all? Nope. Good. So today what I have planned is learning a bit more of the powers of the ORM, if you think so, if you think it's a good thing for you. And for that, I will encourage you to go to this URL. You may not be able to see it, so I'm going to copy here. And download that SQL file.
Can you post it to the channel?
Yeah, I can. I would need to connect.
Oh, I mean, didn't mean you first. Okay. Just,
I can just do it.
yeah.
Someone beat it. And when you have done that, please create a new application called World in your repo. Okay, I have already done that, and I have it here. Oops. So after you have loaded the file, and have created the application, open the project and let's configure our connection. So that's in data source. Okay, were you familiar with this? So KPHP allows, where the actual reason for for having this at the end, this URL env, is so that you can pass environment variables that look like this. So you have MySQL or SQLite. Sorry? Oh, yes, sorry. There you go. Thank you. It can be MySQL or SQLite or Postgres. Oops. The password goes like this: root, for example. This is user, password. I don't have a password, so that's why I removed this. And you can basically do that for cache engines and for log engines as well. And we can now test our connection. Let me see, 1 second. Kill this one here. I started the server, and it's saying that it's able to connect to the database. So that's good. Is everyone else with me? Anyone having problems? Okay, so now I want you to look at the bootstrap.php file and look for the word CLI. You will find something here called require, line 124, require their bootstrap CLI. So that means that there is a file here called bootstrap CLI that you can edit. We're going to edit this file, and what I'm going to do is create a class alias. I'm sorry. I'm aliasing the class T to the class table registry, only for CLI. Not sure if I have inverted the arguments.
Yeah, I think the original should come first and then the alias.
Sure. Needle, haystack, needle. It's PHP. I can, but then I have to import it in use, so I have to write twice. I can what? Yeah. I can. Just for clarity, I wanted to write it all. Okay. So let's try this. I go to the console. And do bean cake console. So how many of you, raise your hand, were familiar with this? Very few people. So the console is an interactive CLI. It's what we call a REPL. This interactive CLI will let you run any command in PHP code that can also load and use classes from your own project. Okay, so for example, a simple thing would be 1 plus 1, you get 2. You can assign a to 1, right? And then a plus 1 is 2. So simple as that. You can also autocomplete classes. For example, if you wanted to instantiate a collection, a equals new cake, I'm tabbing, collection, tab, collection, where is it? It's not here for some reason. That's pretty odd. Or utility, yeah, for example, utility hash. You can, for some reason, collection is not here. Well, okay, it has some sort of step completion that you can use. And remember that we aliased t to something. So we can do a, or that's not a, let's call it countries equals t get countries. And you get the table. Okay, this is a really nice tool for quick debugging in your apps. So let's review what our schema is. So you get used to the data structure we're working with. Unfortunately, it's too small. So I'm going to try something else. SQL. So that's not useful. Let me try something else. Is it not possible to zoom anymore with? There you go. So we have cities, countries, and languages. So it's a pretty easy database. We have, in cities, we have ID, name, country D, district, and population. And in countries, we have the name, the continent, the region, where the country is, the size of the country in many different aspects, the government, and this should not be here. And for languages, well, we have an association between countries and languages. Languages actually have belong to a country, but countries can have many languages, many different languages. One of them can be the official language. Okay, is that clear? It's quite straightforward. I know. The thing is that it has an enum is that this is one of the official databases that MySQL uses for training, so it's available in the public. I actually just changed it a bit so it followed more nicely the Cake conventions. Okay, so any questions about the schema? Straightforward, right? So let's go back to our console. And if I do countries equals t get countries, I get a countries table. Is there anything weird about what I just did that you can tell me? Or that is maybe surprising to you?
Is the console persistent?
Huh? Yeah, that's the weird thing, right? I didn't create any code, and suddenly I can just use the countries table. How come? Well, that's one of the features of the ORM. You don't need code to use the ORM. You can just word the stuff dynamically as you use it. So this ORM in particular is quite useful for like a quick application development. Like you want to hack really quick some shell tool, for example, for consuming something from the database and outputting a CSV, for example. So you don't need a whole Cake application and a lot of configuration to get it done. It was just one string for the connection, and that's it. We can actually verify that. I got another question, which is persistent the code that I write in the console? No, it's not. As soon as I kill the console, the code is gone, and the variables are gone. So I can do, for example, countries find all, and you get a bunch of entities, a lot of them. And I can do, for example, countries find all, combine ID with name, and I get a list. Okay. So what happened here? What is combine?
It's a hash function? Collection function.
It's a collection function. So one thing to know about the ORM, and this is where most of the philosophy of the ORM comes from, or most of the nice things of the ORM can be derived from, is that it returns collections as results. So one of your favorite page from now on should be book kphp.org. You look for collections. And this page lists all the methods that are available in collection classes, including query results. Let's try a few of them. I use combine. Whoops. Another one from the list is, let's try, well, why not first? That's one method. I got the first entity from the database. Another method is, let's take 2. That is more than 2. There should be only 2. Yeah. Let's call toList. So another thing that I can do is chain the methods. So I can take 2 and then combine ID with name, and I get 2 of those. Let me call toList so it's more visible for you.
Does toList execute and cast array, or do you have to use all to execute?
That's a good question. He's asking if I need to call to list. I need to call all or not for getting the results. Let's try that. Same result. So that's another thing. What is actually the result of find? Who can tell me that? It's a query object, exactly. Here you can see that it's a query object. And it has this first line, it's quite nice, called help. Help! This is a query object, it's not the results. Where you can see the SQL, all the types, we're going to talk about types later, that are attached to each of the columns as it was inferred from the database. Some other options, and the repository or table class from which it derived or from which it was created. Okay, so I can also call directly on find without having to call all. I can call first, but there's a difference. This returns the first one. This also returns the first one. Who can tell me what the difference is? People that is experienced with the ORM?
It is already an entity.
Both are entities. When I do this first, it returns me an entity. When I do all first, it's also an entity.
One gets executed first before, and the other one is executed and then gets the first one.
First will be a query, whereas all first would be a collection method. So the first is the collection of the result set.
Exactly. So what he said is that all is, well, get me all the collection. That means all the countries in the database, put it in memory, and then get the first one. But if you call that directly on the query, it knows, oh, well, there's absolutely no sense for me to load all the database in memory if you're telling me to load only the first one. So it limits to one. So that's the difference. So let me go out of this to change something that may be able to help us. I'm going back to app.php, not that one. And here where it said log false, I'm changing to log true. Let's see if I get lucky where I need a bit more config. Go back to my console, create my countries, and try again with first. Not too lucky. Let me just add more config for this. So I need to create a logger that can display the queries in my screen. So at the bottom, I call it SQL in the log array. Let me copy this. I'm not 100% sure what the name is, so I'm going to look it up. Let's console the class. Console with stream. PHP stdr and scopes. Let me verify that I did this and I come back to the code. Yes. So this is our new configuration. I go back to my console. and I call first. Oops. And I should hopefully see the query here. And as you can see here, I have a limit one. But if I try all first, and I see the query, there's no limit one. It loaded everything in memory and then got the first one out of the collection.
Can you show the configuration for a second, please?
Sure.
Scope. Will you commit that to do some tutorial code so you can afterwards take a look at things?
I can do it now if you want, or I can do it later.
Yeah, just
I will. I definitely will.
yeah, that's good. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what other methods do we have? Where's my collections? Lost it. Here. What other methods? Well, we have, for example, group by. So let's try group by. Not to be confused with group in the query method. So I'm going to call all group by continent. So as you can see, there are a few keys where it shows Africa, Europe, South America, Oceania, Antarctica, and so on. Okay? So, a last method I want to show you for the time being is this one. I'll create a function here called mapper. So I'm going to display, I want to display the country name with its population size. Thank you. And I think, let me just verify that it's population size, just population.
It should be entity name.
And should be entity. Okay, so I have a function called mapper. Fantastic. And I will call now find mapper. And let me call toList so it's more visible. There you go. So I have a list of all the countries, a string with their population size. Okay, so a first exercise for you is to construct a final array out of the countries that displays the country name, the life expectancy, grouped by continent. If if I use map, I still get entities. You can see here.
Don't use map, you
In both cases, I get entities. See, a lot of entities. I still use map.
yeah, again a lot of entities and then it doesn't look nice. I use select instead of map. Maybe that doesn't work.
Select instead of map.
Yeah, for name and life expectancy.
Okay, that's fair enough. Try to not to only use find for now. Just use the collection method.
Okay.
The mapper. Has anyone gotten to the solution yet?
It should be string, a list of strings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why not.
Are you calling to list? How many of you are stuck? Yeah. In what part are you stuck? In what?
Does the expectancy doesn't group?
Okay.
Does it matter if map or group by comes first in the
Yeah, that is it's important
Why can't we use find list?
because they want you to learn the collections.
Can you show the line before? Because that we had the one with entity, with the map of entity, because somehow I don't. The one before? No, the one before. Okay. So where's entity coming from? No.
This entity?
How do I have to pass? Yeah, okay. That's the problem.
Okay. So I'm going to write the solution now. So I know that countries find get me all countries. And there are, sorry. Anyway, I need just to show less, that's the problem. Yeah. So I get the countries. I have the life expectancy here as a property, the population as a property, and the continent as a property. So let me create a function that first returns the three things that I'm interested about. Okay? So I can create a mapper. That receives an entity. I wonder if this works. 1 second. Yes, it does. Nice. And thus, or would return an array of, let me do it a bit more fancy, entity extract the following properties: population, life expectancy, and continent.
We need the name too.
Sorry?
Would we need the name too?
And the name, sorry. I will have to create it again. And the name. Let me remove the name for now. Just it's more succinct example. Okay, so for now I'm gonna remove the name restriction. No, actually I'm gonna put it back. Sorry. Name. Okay. So if I try that right now, so I say countries, find and map with mapper, maybe take two to list, I get only an array with these arrays inside. Okay? So I need to group by continent, but only after I have constructed the string. So let me create a second mapper. This is an array, and I will return as continent array continent, and as the string, the final string will be I'm going to be a bit lazy, sorry, but just use psprintf. No, that's not going to work. I need to manually name all those. So, comma, string is array name dot array population array life expectancy. Close the array. Finish the function. Okay, now I have a second mapper. So let me apply it one after the other. So map with the first mapper, and then map again with the second mapper. Where? Ah. So map with the first mapper, map again with the second mapper. Let's go. So I have this. Right? So what would be the final step? We already saw that function before? Yes. Group by continent. No take to list. And there you go. Oh. To array. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so this is a way you can construct a pipeline of transformations on your data without writing a lot of loops and a lot of logic. And the cool thing is that this logic is reusable, because you can group the transformations that happen one after the other, and put it in a single class that can be applied to a collection and always return that result. And if you want to skip parts of that transformation pipeline, you can quickly comment that out one line and see, oh, this is not the one causing the bug or changing the data in the way I thought it was changing it. Question about this?
Is there a difference between calling find with no argument and calling find with the argument all?
His question if there's a difference between calling find with an argument or calling find with an argument all. No, there's no difference. All is the default value for the finder. So on the inside, PHP is calling find all.
What exactly is the return value of the map? It's like the query string because you executed group by on what map returns. You piped it already.
What is the return value of map?
Yeah,
Of all the collection function? That's a great question. So let's see, what is it? Get class of this is a replace iterator. So we go to replace iterator. Here in PHP, in CakePHP, and we see that extends collection. So it's a collection. Let's try again map. Mapper 2. Thank you. Same replace iterator. Group by. Continent. Again collection. So every time you call a collection function, it returns a collection. So you get, again, the same methods of the collection class you can call over and over and over and over again.
So this is the reason why we can always keep on calling these in the pipeline.
Exactly.
It's always going to be the same type.
That's exactly correct. It's always going to be the same type, but not always the same collection. So I like that you said that, because A equals collection. This is a method that is globally available to you. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is A. And you know in PHP that an object is equal to the same object, right? That's not surprising, right? And you call B equals A. And we try to do this. It's obviously the same object. But if I do B equals group, we'll just call it first. No, first is not a good option. Take 2. And I'll try to do A equals B. they're false. It's not the same object. So when I do this, a map take something, etc., 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 at the end, it's not returning the same collection A was at the beginning. So every time you call a method on a collection, it returns a new collection.
So I have two more questions. So that means that every time you call another one in the pipeline, you're using more RAM memory, right? So let's say you're
No, you're using actually less memory than if you would use an array.
because it's going to take what you did and do something with it, and that's the product in the new objects.
Yeah, but that's the second property of collections. They're lazy. So when you call, let's do this. Mapper 3 equals function gets a sleep for the eternity and return a. Oops. PHP under semicolons. So I try a, or just collection of 1, 2, 3, mapper 3. What's going to happen? That was fast. That was faster than eternity. So when you call map group by certain functions, I'm not going to say all of the functions in the collection, but a big chunk of them, they're lazy. That means they're not executed until you finally call to list or to array. So you can go grab a coffee until this finishes. No, not really. Okay, so that's the second property of a collection.
The second question was, how many MySQL queries happen?
How many? That's exactly one, but let's actually take a look at that. I need to set countries to countries equals t get countries and use useless countries find take 2, then take 1, that's another collection, and then finally to list. So in theory, if it was implemented in some naive way, then it should have done 2 queries, right? Let's see how many SQL statements I got with a select. 1. So it's only 1.
But why should it have taken 2 working collections, not on?
Well, that was his question. How many? Because as his first question was, is the underlying data copied somehow?
Yeah.
And then it's natural to think, well, if it's not copied, that means it needs to be fetched dynamically. So the question is normal. But no, the query will guarantee that it's only executed once.
So, because my question is, can similar in a usable way or rather easy way, similar be done to composing selects? Because this will hit the database with full start projection, and then you do the filtering and mapping and everything. So everything goes through the wire in case you have more data. It's a different thing. And can you do a similar composition to selects that then once the query executes, that is executed or some way? You know what I mean?
That you want to run the transformations in the database instead of in PHP?
This would be like views.
Yeah, in a way you would have to do that.
No, not in an easy way, of course, but
Well,
what you need to keep in mind is collections. Okay, is that collections are for transforming data that is already in memory.
so it's just for this you wouldn't do with collection usually. What you're doing.
What exactly? Transforming millions of rows? That's what you mean?
No, getting 3 columns, grouping by, and then.
Sometimes. If I am more a database guy, so I prefer running that kind of stuff in the database, unless it's millions of rows, in which I can run part of the query in the database as fast as I can get, and then I can parallelize that by emitting jobs in a queue. So that's what I do.
You can also reduce the amount of data that's coming back from the database by selecting specifically the columns that you need.
And that's a great advice, actually.
And then just use the collections for fancy stuff.
Yeah, that's a great advice. What he said is that if you're dealing with too many columns, too much data that is coming from the wire, it is always a great idea to specify the columns that you actually wanted to select. So we actually wanted name, population, and life expectancy, and continent. To list, take 2. And you can see that I only got those. That's a great way of reducing data that comes from the wire, and actually it reduces a lot the time in PHP. If you select everything all the time, PHP will need to find those that are not strings and convert it to numbers, to dates, to arrays, to JSON, to whatever you have said your column is. Specifically, returning date objects is expensive for PHP. So if you don't always need created, modified, etc., all those objects, it's better to not select them. Most of the times, not to say like 99% of the times, it's not important to do that optimization. Is that as your application grows, after you have solved the most common bottlenecks, you will start thinking, okay, too much data in the wire, that will keep reducing the time. The execution time. Yeah. Any other question? Nope. So we have a few minutes break. So you get a coffee and stretch your legs. Okay. See you back in a minute.